Hi there, welcome to the archives. So this episode is called the P-Valley Effect. So I saved this post for Virgo season because Virgos are typically known to be perfectionists, and P-Valley, I feel, has big Virgo energy. Think like Beyonce, just that level of perfectionism. It also has big Scorpio energy, but I digress. That's neither here nor there. Okay, so let me pull this up. Okay, so like this show, maybe don't watch this if you're not above 18. And even then, there are some grown folks who are still too immature for this content or this topic. You might find it, as well as I, insulting or repulsive. So just look away. Just turn away. Don't go into it. Hit stop. Throw it in the trash. Keep it moving. So if you haven't watched P-Valley, it could be because you're a broke girl like me who nobody likes, and therefore no one is willing to share their streaming services passwords with you. Or you're a conservative prude and you know and trust yourself that you can't handle it. So good for you. Good for you. You either think you're A, going to hell, B, you're trying to avoid an ulcer, C, you're dodging a heart attack, or D, all of the above. You're probably right about D. So just keep trusting yourself, stay away. The show is not for you, or the weak, or the faint of heart. So I've been trying to articulate why I love P-Valley so much, and there has been no words that come up to mind to describe what it does to me, or why it's been such an important piece of work. When I watched the Wakanda Forever trailer, and this is not to compare the two, but when I watched the Wakanda Forever trailer, I realized immediately why or what P-Valley does for me. It gives me goosebumps. I can't even talk about it. I'm in awe. I'm mesmerized. I've never seen anything like it in my entire life on screen. So I'm editing the video, and there's a few more things I wanted to add. First of all, when I say that I've never seen anything like this on film, I mean in that specific particular way. That's not to say that it hasn't been done before, because as I think back, like, it definitely has been done before. Maybe not on the big screens, or maybe even on the big screens. But I'm just saying, in all of it, how it shows up, I had never seen it that way. But it's been done before. Maybe that's hyperbole. I saw a tweet that said, people who read when they were younger because they know big words, but they don't know how to pronounce anything. Maybe I'm being dramatic. That's highly likely. Am I being extra? Always, right? So there's something about, this one's going to be a little longer. So if I'm talking a little bit quicker, slow it down on your own time. There's something about some artists who tell their stories, and they do it in such a way that it leaves you breathless, or at least leaves me breathless, at a loss for words. And P-Valley does that for me. If it's not for you, again, that's great. Like, thankfully, there's over 7 billion of us, and not one of us are the same. So rejoice in that. Just keep it moving. Know that it's not for you. Trust it's not for you, and that's fine. No one cares. Just like maybe no one cares about this either. That's not personal. Others have written about P-Valley, and well, although I don't see enough, and I've seen somebody say that online, that there's not enough publications being written about P-Valley, I'm here to infuse a nerdy affect theory, emotions research kind of a spin. It's how it makes me feel is the easiest way for me to capture its gravity in my life. And is that boring? Well, look at who's delivering it. So I dare you to watch P-Valley without being affected. I just got a PhD specializing in shame research and affect theory. So I know what I'm saying when I say that if for real, it moves me beyond my thresholds. As in, to pause, to exhale, to moan, to screw face, to snap, to clap, to go numb, to dissociate, to tap in, to feel, to zone out. I shiver, I get goosebumps, I get silent, I'm left speechless. I can't say anything. And then there's other moments where I'm talking out loud to myself. It's a lot. Mostly I needed to watch a few of the episodes again to process it. That's some of the ways in which it means to be affected. So, to be even more boring, the word affect has its roots in French and late 19th century Middle English. How we respond to, feel, express, and are moved by emotion is one of the ways in which you can make sense of the word affect. At its core, it means to be moved or influenced to produce a change in the way, that's some of the ways it's popularly understood, right? So if something moves you, you cry, you felt that peace. You can say that you're affected. It's a geeky way to say you felt that. Like we just say, I felt that. Like I hear you, I feel you. Academics say like you affected me, or I affected you. So what else? It's popularly known as to have an effect on, to make a difference, to feel something, to have an impression, to leave an impression, or to influence a disposition. So emotions are not the same thing as affect. Emotions is affect, but it's not necessarily the same thing as affect. Emotions are responses and byproducts of being affected in the literature. So what happens when you feel or express an emotion can be thought of as affect. So you feel something and then it makes you so angry that you start to cry, right? That process of crying, that the emotion of anger moves you to cry. You can consider that as being affected. You get so overwhelmed that you are moved beyond your normal capacity, right? The moment produces an energy that moves in and through you that's just too much, which is why trauma is a way in which we can consider affect, right? The textbook definition, the psychological definition of trauma is to feel too much too quickly, where you dissociate. We're not getting into that. But what I will say is that P-Valley does touch on my traumas. It re-triggers certain things in me. It makes me want to cry at some point. It rips me into the past. It ignites old wounds. It makes it hard for me to feel in the present moment. I got so sad watching the Black Panther trailer. I wanted to cry. The Wakanda Forever trailer, sorry. I wanted to cry, right? There's as somebody who's known as a crybaby and people make fun of me for it, while I shouldn't care, I do find that sometimes I will hold back tears, especially when I know that it's expected from me. And so this is common for some of us. A lot of us, we act hard when we'd rather be soft. We fight back tears to not cry because we don't want to look weak, because we don't want to look like we're too soft. But I think Chadwick is so worthy of all of those tears, because what a loss. There is loss and grief in both P-Valley and Wakanda Forever trailer, especially around death. It's not metaphorical that we lost our Black Panther. Like, he literally was taken away. Chadwick transitioned. He is gone. Though I'm sure his presence is likely still felt by those who knew him and knew him personally. There is a sense of loss and mourning for a lot of us. He should be here. There's that feeling of like he should be here. And being reminded of that, especially in that context, it's painful. It can hurt. So I treated recently that grief is hard for me. It's a very hard, difficult thing for me. And I think many of us to sit in and feel. I was taught that grief is the emotion, while grieving is a process of negotiating the multitude. I think it was David Lewis Pert, maybe, who I heard that from in a workshop that I watched from David's. I think he explained grief as like the emotion, and then grieving as a process of negotiating the multitude of other emotions that show up in grief. I saw a post a few days ago that said that grief is not an emotion, it's actually the process. In any case, grief is hard for many of us, myself included. So I get why some consider it as not an emotion and as affect. Again, it ties back to why emotions are not the same thing as affect, right? Because grief is if it's a process, it's what happens to you when you feel these other emotions. So that makes sense to me as well, too. Grief and other difficult and complicated feelings are interwoven all throughout P-Valley. But so are other contradictory emotions like joy and happiness and pleasure and content. I feel like I celebrate life more than I mourn grief when I watch P-Valley as well as the trailer. So few artists are able to thread that line and find that balance, right, between loss and grief. Like it's hard to hold space with joy and grief, excuse me, right? We tend to tip the scale so much to one side or to the other, and it's hard for when you're reversing it from one side to the other to hold space for that, right? And in such a way that the binary now collapses altogether. That to me is so genius, and P-Valley is able to do that. Katori Hall does that. Like the writers in the show do that amazingly. When you aren't many people aren't able to do that, where they don't get it. They don't get anything beyond the binary. You're either sad or you're joyful. They're like, how are you happy and sad at the same time? Because I'm a human. That's what humans do. We're not caught in these binaries, right? If you go to an African funeral, it's very much so that there's different. On Sundays we celebrate. We go to church and we wear black and white and we celebrate death. A lot of cultures will not understand that. How are you celebrating somebody who just died? How are you having a party? Well, because that's life. You celebrate life just as you also mourn it. The Africans get that, but then when it comes to other binaries, they're like, no. You're either a slut or you're not. Like, wait, what? That's not how it works. Neither here nor there. So P-Valley does that. It disrupts binaries. If you already don't mess with binaries or you understand how harmful they can be, finding this show, watching this piece of art, it's so exhilarating. It's so freeing. It's very liberatory. It feels so good to watch P-Valley. And I mean, in a feel-good, communal joy, belly laughs, relatable moments. I'm already at 11 minutes and I'm only on page 3 and there's 5 pages. So bear with me, okay? I feel like this deserves it. You can feel free to tap O or come back later if you want. I get it. But P-Valley makes you feel so good. As in joy, communal joy, belly laughs, relatable moments, being seen. I felt so seen. I felt heard. I felt held. I felt cared for. Like they really thought about us. Like Katori Hall really, really gave us their best. Over and above, A++. This is excellence. We are not worthy. Thank you for representing us like this. It makes you feel so good, and as in pleasure good. There's so much pleasure in P-Valley. The scene where Lil Murda and Uncle Cliff make the sex scene, it makes you want to do a wall slide, and it makes me want to scream like, God damn, like as if you're Southern. I mean, well, I'm Canadian and African, and I'm not Southern at all. It teleports you to another time and place. It's hot, it's steamy, but it's also very normal. It's also very ordinary. It's delicious. It's so us, and I wrote us, and then I'm like, well, I'm not active. Like, I'm not enjoying life in this way, so it's y'all. It's not really me, because I can't claim that life. But you never really see Black people represented in this type of a way, like where it's just so common. Mostly because there's so much shame, right? So this is a part where shame comes in. We're supposed to just feel shame for watching this. Shame shuts down the whole conversation from even starting, that we end up not having the conversation at all. As someone who is raised Catholic, I'm supposed to feel ashamed for not only watching it, but liking it, right? It should be shameful to love it. God forbid that like the younger generations find out that I watch P-Valley and like they want to do the same. For shame, right? So doing shame research has saved me from all of this in many ways, from shame and the projected shame that comes from others. So we see how shame shows up in the show between the characters. It's projected onto people. It's internalized. It's weaponized. Shame for sure does show up in the show. Be it around sex work, sex, sexualized bodies, gay bodies, trans people, the pole, strippers, so on and so forth. All the messaging that society tells us are shameful, you'll find it in P-Valley. You'll find it reproduced, you'll find it perpetuated, you'll also find it disrupted and completely done away with as well too. Double standard. So when you watch heterosexual couples do what Cliff and Lil Murda were doing, I mean, of course they still clutch their pearls because they're just like, no sex, no sex. Make no mistake, that still happens, but I think that it's even more amplified when you're seeing sex scenes between same-sex couples, between different bodies, whether it's disabled body, neurodivergent bodies, racialized bodies. It's just when sex is happening from people that you don't typically see on screen, it's even more taboo. I had people in the past tell me that showing sex on screen on television shows borders softcore porn. And I mean, like, if that's your take, that's your opinion, great, right? If that's how you define porn, I was a sexual health educator, so I just have different definitions of porn. But it's interesting that folks who watch porn or have watched porn and maybe no longer do or have internalized some of that shame, it shows up around what we police on television, around what is considered porn and what's not. Even if there's a content warning, even if it says it's this show has sexualized sexual content, 18 and above, there's still a lot of taboo surrounding it. So generally the assumption is that sex is private, it's for the bedroom. You don't share it outside of the bedroom, not even on television. It's not art. It's just nobody's supposed to know that you're having sex. So Lil Murda, Uncle Cliff, they're actually quite common, I wrote. These are real life stories, right? A lot of us know men who love and have sex with other men, but they're not able to talk about it. Okay, so here I wanted to pause also and say that in having a conversation around MSM, like men who have sex with men, that's not to say that Uncle Cliff and P. Murda are men who have sex with men. Two different things. Uncle Cliff, from my understanding, identifies as a woman. That would be a trans woman. Very different from a man. But Teak, Big Teak, and Lil Murda, that was what I also meant. There is that sex scene as well too, where you see Big Teak and Lil Murda having sex, and that was also brilliantly beautiful scene. Those are common stories we see. Same with Uncle Cliff and Lil Murda. So there are trans women who also have sex with like rappers, for instance. And I think there's a TMZ clip of Laverne Cox who talks about, it's just a quick segment. Laverne, I think it was Lil Nas X, and basically saying like good for them for coming out, quote unquote coming out, for just living in their truth, and that more rappers should also I'm not going to get into that, but P Valley goes there, right? People say don't have the conversation, and I put they do like the Usher challenge and like just watch us. They definitely have those conversations. It goes there. I saw on Twitter recently that the heterosexual boys were so mad over P Valley. They had to, some of them were coming online to let the world know that they didn't like it, or that they stopped watching it altogether. It's like, I mean, that couldn't have remained private. It's triggering a lot of people, myself included. If you're already unhinged, if this show it will push you over the edge. So be warned. It's not for the faint of heart or for the weak. And I don't mean that in a way where it's like you're soft and you can't handle it, or that you shouldn't watch it. It's just, you watch it and you'll see what I mean. If your nervous system is not regulated, you will suffer from watching this. And again, that's not in a negative way. That's just to say, like, maybe certain traumas will really get triggered. If you're, like, homophobic, your nervous system will be off the roof, off the charts. It will hurt you. Maybe your feelings might get hurt. You might get angry. You might be repulsed. You might be disgusted. You might be intrigued or fascinated. Again, that depends on how much of, like, queerphobia, homophobia, biphobia, whorephobia. If you have all of these phobias, you will be shook. If you find yourself hard, and maybe just not even by choice, it moves you. The girls on the pole, oh my goodness, like the Mercedes experience, oh my god, what are you talking about? You will be reaching for tissue. When she has the scene with her and Coach's wife, oh yeah. Find a hotter sex scene on TV. Oh wait. The coach gets so mad. Like, he literally threw a temper tantrum and kicked her out without her money. His ego was really bruised. And, like, that's real life. A lot of men can't handle that. It's an easy watch. It's also hard to digest at the same time, and for so many reasons. I have some critiques, but that's not what this episode is about. Maybe another time. And I haven't even talked about the class representations, domestic violence, single motherhood, strip club culture, suicide, drug overdose. There's so many complex sociopolitical thing. Life is just happening. Like, life is just happening as we know it. Not like life is happening. It's all of it is happening. I haven't watched the last few episodes because, as I said, lone wolf life. But I hope to watch and catch up on them soon. There's so much happening in P-Valley. It moves at a pace, though. I feel like it moves at a pace, both fast and slow. Neither all more or less. Like, all of it is there. I want more. Just like I want to watch Wakanda Forever right now. November is too far away. I already want a crime public, right? Give us these sorts of representations. Give us these visions, these visuals, these dialogues, the lighting, the effect, the melanin, the vulnerability, the excellence. Thank you. It's all so good. You just know when something different, for me, you know when you feel something different, like it hits different. You feel it, no matter what people say to bring it down because it makes them feel uncomfortable with the intensity. For sure, very few people can take this level of intensity. You will get triggered too easily. They can't handle the emotions. Never mind in such extremes. I was like that. I'm still like that, right? We have to shut it down. No, this is not art. This is awful. This is trash. People say people want to ban it. They want to destroy it. You push up against it. You talk bad about it. You discredit it. It's too threatening for many. Simply put, they're not ready. And maybe they never will be. And it's not their cup of tea. And maybe it will never be. But rather than agree to disagree, what some will do is like they need to be right. They need to win. They need to prove a point. And then it becomes this like back and forth thing, especially if you have power. There's no creativity. There's very little imagination. They can't see any different ways of being. And they don't even want to grasp it. They just want to keep the old, make it great again. Take us back to the good old days when all of this was underground and out of sight. You know, we knew it was there and even participated in it. Some of us, or not some of us, not me. Right, like these younger generations, they can't talk about it. We expect different from them, even though we didn't do different. So that's not how it works. And I think P-Valley's here to remind us that that's not how life works. I don't expect nobody to publicly like this, so don't bother. Most people don't. If you do, thank you so much for listening. Until next time, in solidarity.